started with a single phone call. A man's voice, trembling, reporting something strange in the woods. The dispatcher thought it was just another late-night scare, until the police arrived and found the impossible. No signs of struggle, no footprints leading away. Just an empty car still running, headlights cutting through the fog, and a trail that stopped cold. Over the years, dozens of theories have surfaced, from elaborate cover-ups to something no one dares to say out loud. Investigators have moved on to other cases, but this one, it lingers. It haunts them, because every time someone looks back, every time a new detective opens that file, strange things start happening again. What really happened that night? Why does this one unsolved mystery still terrify even the toughest investigators decades later? Tonight, we dive deep into the mystery, and what you're about to hear may change the way you think about coincidences forever. Chapter 1: The Night It Began. It was the kind of night that looked harmless, quiet, still, even peaceful. But beneath that calm, something was waiting. Just after 11:47 p.m., a single 911 call came in from a deserted stretch of highway outside a small town. The caller's voice was shaking. "There's a car here. The lights are on, but there's no one inside." When officers arrived, the air felt heavier than usual. The car's engine was still running, the driver's door wide open, and a phone lay face down on the seat. The flashlight still on, pointing toward the trees. No footprints, no tire marks, no blood. Just silence. What struck the officers most wasn't what they found. It was what they didn't. The air felt charged, almost electric. One of them later said it felt like stepping into a paused moment in time. Even the forest seemed to be holding its breath. The missing person's name was Daniel Holt, a 32-year-old teacher known for his calm demeanor and love for night drives. His family said he'd left home for a quick ride to clear his head. But somehow, Daniel never came back. No one could have known it yet, but that empty car on a foggy back road would soon become one of the most baffling unsolved cases in modern history. Chapter 2: The Vanishing Trail. The search for Daniel Holt began before sunrise. By dawn, the entire area was flooded with flashlights, dogs, and drones. But what they found made no sense at all. There were no footprints leading away from the car, no signs of a struggle, no tire tracks from another vehicle. It was as if Daniel had simply evaporated into thin air. Investigators combed through the nearby woods for days. Every search ended the same way: silence. When they finally examined Daniel's phone, things got stranger. The last recorded video was only 6 seconds long. It showed his dashboard, faint breathing, and a muffled whisper that sounded like someone else. Forensic audio analysts later confirmed there were 2 distinct voices in the clip. But that wasn't even the strangest part. His GPS history showed the car had briefly stopped 2 miles earlier, near an abandoned service station that had been shut down for over 20 years. When police checked it, they found Daniel's fingerprints on the door handle, but the dust and grime on the building suggested it hadn't been opened in decades. Where did Daniel go? Why did he stop there? And most chilling of all, who was whispering in that final recording? Chapter 3: The Footage They Weren't Supposed to See. 2 weeks after Daniel's disappearance, investigators received a tip that changed everything. A local gas station clerk, working the night of Daniel's last sighting, claimed to have footage from a security camera that pointed directly toward the old service station. When detectives arrived, the clerk hesitated. He warned them, "You don't want to see this." But they insisted. The footage began normally: empty road, occasional headlights passing by. Then, at exactly 11:39 p.m., Daniel's car appeared. It slowed down near the abandoned station and stopped. He stepped out, phone in hand, looking confused. Then something moved behind him, a faint, human-shaped shadow that didn't match his. But what made investigators' stomachs turn wasn't the shadow. It was Daniel's reaction. He never turned around. He just froze, completely still, for a full 11 seconds, before walking into the darkness as if pulled by something unseen. Seconds later, the screen glitched. The feed cut out. When it came back, the car lights were still on, but Daniel was gone. That footage was never released to the public. The official report simply labeled it corrupted. But one officer admitted, years later, that what he saw in those final frames wasn't something human. And yet, somehow, that wasn't even the most disturbing discovery they'd make. Chapter 4: The Note in the Trunk. 3 days after reviewing the footage, detectives decided to impound Daniel's car for a deeper forensic sweep. They had already checked it twice, but one investigator, Sergeant Hayes, couldn't shake the feeling they'd missed something. He was right. Hidden under the spare tire compartment, pressed flat against the metal, was a single folded note. No fingerprints, no smudges, just clean, untouched paper with 5 haunting words written in smudged pencil. "You should have stayed on the road." The handwriting didn't match Daniel's. In fact, after analysis, it didn't match anyone's in his life, family, friends, co-workers. The angle of the strokes suggested the writer was left-handed. But Daniel wasn't. Even stranger, the paper itself wasn't standard stock. Forensic specialists dated it to at least the 1970s. Old, yellowed, and slightly brittle, like something you'd find in an attic box. But how did it end up in Daniel's car, which he'd bought only 6 months earlier? When investigators questioned the car's previous owner, she said she'd bought it from an estate auction, belonging to a man who had died mysteriously, near the same stretch of road where Daniel disappeared. It was the first thread connecting 2 deaths, decades apart. And once detectives pulled it, everything began to unravel. Chapter 5: The Second Disappearance, 240 words. Just when investigators thought Daniel Holt's case couldn't get stranger, it happened again. A volunteer searcher, a young man named Eli Porter, vanished while combing through the same patch of woods where Daniel's car was found. The team noticed he was gone only after a radio call went unanswered. At first, they assumed Eli had just lost signal, but when they retraced his steps, they found his flashlight lying on the ground, still on. Next to it, footprints. Eli's and another set that didn't match anyone on the team. Larger, barefoot, deep enough to suggest whoever it was stood perfectly still for several minutes, watching. Within hours, the scene was sealed off. Investigators scoured the forest with every resource available: helicopters, K9s, heat scanners. Nothing. Eli was gone, leaving no trace, just like Daniel. But what truly chilled detectives was a single photo on Eli's phone, taken minutes before his disappearance. It showed an outline between the trees, faint, almost transparent. The figure looked eerily human but slightly distorted, as if the camera itself was resisting the image. When the FBI reviewed the file, they classified it immediately. Local authorities never saw it again. For the small town, panic set in. For investigators, it was confirmation of their worst fear: whatever took Daniel was still out there. Chapter 6: The Forgotten Witness, 240 words. A week after Eli Porter vanished, a tip came from someone no one expected: Clara Jensen, an 82-year-old woman who lived just 2 miles from the forest's edge. Clara claimed she saw something on the night Daniel disappeared. At first, detectives dismissed her. She'd lived alone for years, and locals often called her eccentric. But when she described what she'd seen, everyone in the room went silent. She said that around 2 a.m., she heard an unfamiliar sound outside, a humming low and rhythmic, like machinery but alive. When she looked out her window, she saw 2 lights hovering above the treeline. Not airplane lights, not drones. They moved slowly, pulsing, and then vanished without a sound. Moments later, she swore she saw a figure walking along the dirt road near her mailbox. Barefoot, tall, and soaking wet. She thought it was Daniel, but something about the way it moved made her freeze. "It wasn't walking," she said softly. "It was gliding." When she blinked, it was gone. Forensic teams searched the road where Clara claimed to have seen the figure. There, in the mud, they found a single bare footprint, identical in size and shape to the one discovered near Eli's flashlight. Now investigators couldn't deny it any longer. This wasn't random. Someone or something was stalking that forest. Chapter 7: The Secret Tape, 240 words. Just when the case seemed ready to go cold again, a new piece of evidence surfaced. One that would change everything. During a secondary sweep of Daniel's cabin, a deputy discovered an old camcorder wedged behind a dresser. Inside, a tape, unmarked, covered in dust. Investigators assumed it was just home footage. But when they pressed play, what they saw sent chills through the entire task force. The footage began innocently, Daniel, days before his disappearance, filming himself as a kind of personal journal. He talked about the strange sounds at night, the way the forest seemed to breathe, and how, for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. Then the camera angle changed. It was late at night, and Daniel had set the camera by his window. For several minutes, there was only darkness. But slowly, faint lights began to flicker between the trees, moving closer and closer. And then, a voice, whispering his name. Daniel whispered back, "Who's there?" And before the camera cut to static, a distorted image appeared. It was human-shaped, but the face was blank, like light bending around nothing. When the video ended, one detective reportedly left the room, visibly shaken. The file was labeled Evidence 7B, sealed, and never released to the public. But insiders say, that tape still plays on its own when stored near electronic devices. Chapter 8: Patterns in the Shadows. After discovering the tape, investigators began to re-examine the case from scratch. And that's when something strange happened. Every photo, every document, every timestamp seemed to connect through subtle, eerie coincidences. At first, it was just numbers. The date Daniel disappeared? July 13th. The coordinates of his cabin added together? Also 13. But then came the photos. In every image taken during the investigation, no matter the time or angle, faint shapes appeared in the background, long, narrow silhouettes standing between the trees. Some assumed it was a camera glitch or shadow play, but others noticed a recurring pattern, the same spacing, the same faint curve of what looked like a head tilted slightly to the side, almost watching. When specialists enhanced the photos, a more unsettling detail emerged. In one frame, barely visible through the grain, there appeared to be 5 figures standing just beyond the cabin, identical in height and form. None of them had faces. Even stranger, Daniel's journal mentioned 5 watchers days before his disappearance. Detectives who studied those photos started reporting vivid nightmares. Some swore they saw the same faceless shapes standing outside their own windows. Coincidence? Maybe. But as one investigator quietly admitted years later, once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And then, it starts to see you back. Chapter 9: The Insider's Confession. For months, the investigation had been going in circles. But then, out of nowhere, a man came forward. Someone who claimed to know the truth. He was a former maintenance worker at the research lab Daniel had been investigating. His name was Victor Hale. Victor's voice shook as he spoke, his hands fidgeting with a worn keychain. "They told us to keep quiet," he began, "about what was found under the site, about what we brought up from the ground." The detectives leaned in. According to Victor, the lab wasn't just studying environmental changes, they were conducting sound experiments deep underground. Strange low-frequency tones meant to map vibrations in the earth. But something unexpected happened. The tones started to echo back, like something below was responding. That's when workers began hearing whispers through their headsets, or seeing shadows that didn't match their own. Then came Daniel, poking around, asking questions, getting too close. Victor claimed he saw Daniel's final night on security footage. He walked into the tunnel, Victor whispered, and the lights went out. But I heard him screaming, not just from fear. It sounded like something was pulling him. When investigators tried to retrieve the footage, it was gone. Wiped. Every copy. Victor's final words before vanishing himself? "You can't bury sound. It always finds a way to come back." Chapter 10: The Footage That Shouldn't Exist. Weeks after Victor Hale's mysterious disappearance, an unmarked envelope arrived at the local police department. Inside, a single USB drive labeled, "Play carefully." At first, the detectives thought it was a prank. But the second they plugged it in, the room went dead silent. The footage began, time-stamped exactly one night before Daniel Mercer vanished. The video showed the tunnel Victor had described. A long, concrete corridor lined with flickering lights, stretching endlessly into the darkness. Daniel appears, flashlight in hand, muttering notes into his recorder. Acoustic tests, interference stronger tonight. Sounds deeper than usual. His voice was steady, but there was something off, like he was trying to convince himself he wasn't afraid. Then a faint rumble, a low, vibrating tone that made the camera glitch. Daniel turned toward the darkness and whispered, "Hello!" The rumble grew louder, almost like breathing. The lights flickered violently. And then, just before the footage distorted completely, a shape appeared behind him. Not quite human, not quite shadow. When the frame stabilized, Daniel was gone. Investigators froze the video, enhanced it, slowed it down frame by frame, but no matter how they analyzed it, one thing remained undeniable. The shadow wasn't moving toward Daniel. It was emerging from him. Chapter 11: The Missing Investigators. After the footage surfaced, the case spiraled into chaos. Two seasoned detectives, Avery Collins and Marcus Trent, were assigned to lead the investigation. Both were veterans, calm under pressure, known for solving some of the state's most twisted crimes. But this case, it broke them. At first, they treated it like any other missing person inquiry. They combed through the tunnels beneath the abandoned asylum, tracing Daniel Mercer's last known path. Hours passed. Their radios crackled with static. Nothing unusual, they thought, until they both heard it. A voice, not from their comms, but echoing through the tunnels. Soft, fragmented, like someone whispering underwater. "You shouldn't have come back." Avery thought it was a prank. Marcus insisted they keep moving. Their body cams recorded everything until 2:47 a.m., when Avery screamed. The feed cut out for exactly 6 minutes. When the footage returned, both detectives were gone. The only sound was the slow drip of water. The last frame showed Avery's flashlight rolling across the ground, stopping at a pair of wet footprints that led deeper into the dark. A search team entered the next morning. They found the flashlight, the cameras, but no trace of Avery or Marcus. Since then, that tunnel has been sealed. Officially, it's structurally unstable. Unofficially, no one wants to hear what's still whispering down there. Chapter 12: The Forbidden Tunnel. The locals call it the tunnel that breathes. Built in the early 1900s, it was meant to connect the asylum's lower ward to a nearby service building. But even workers back then reported strange noises, the sound of footsteps when no one was there, and sudden gusts of wind as if the tunnel itself was exhaling. After the disappearance of detectives Avery and Marcus, that section was locked off with reinforced steel. Signs were posted, "Danger, do not enter." Yet, over the years, trespassers have ignored the warnings. And every single one of them came out with the same story. They said the air down there moves, that it's warm, like breath against the skin. One group of urban explorers recorded a deep, rhythmic sound on their camera, like something inhaling and exhaling slowly from somewhere deep within the earth. When they played the footage back at home, the sound wasn't just rhythmic. It was mimicking them. Every time one of them spoke, the tunnel responded, repeating their words in a distorted whisper seconds later. Experts have tried to explain it away: air pressure, acoustics, vibrations. But those who've been there, they swear something's alive in those walls. And the chilling part? The voice doesn't just echo your words. It learns your name. Chapter 13: The Survivor's Testimony. Only 2 people ever made it out of that tunnel after going too deep. Their names were Lydia Crane and Ethan Rhodes, amateur filmmakers chasing urban legends for their small YouTube channel. What they captured changed everything. In their footage, you can hear them laughing at first, flashlights bouncing off the damp stone walls. Then, a voice, faint, distant, says Lydia's name. Not in a shout, not in a whisper, just calm, familiar, like someone who's known her for years. Lydia freezes. Ethan turns the camera toward her, whispering, "Was that you?" She shakes her head. They start to leave, but the voice comes again. This time it says both their names. Moments later, the recording shakes violently. The light flickers. A sound like rushing air fills the tunnel. When the footage resumes, Ethan is gone, and Lydia is running, screaming, her flashlight beam jerking wildly until the feed cuts off. She was found at dawn near the entrance, covered in dust, her eyes wide with terror. She never spoke again. Ethan's body was never found. Police analyzed the recording for weeks. They confirmed there were 3 voices on it: Lydia, Ethan, and something else. Whatever it was, it didn't echo. It answered. Chapter 14. The police reopened the case. For years, the strange disappearances had been dismissed, blamed on accidents, poor planning, or urban myth. But when Lydia's footage surfaced online, everything changed. Detective Maria Delgado, a veteran investigator with over 2 decades on the force, was the first to demand the case be reopened. She wasn't one for ghost stories, but what she saw in that footage. It didn't fit anything she'd ever encountered. Frame by frame, her team enhanced the video. Behind Ethan and Lydia, a faint outline appeared. Not a shadow, not a trick of light, but the silhouette of a person standing completely still. No features. No reflection. Just watching. Forensics ran the audio through spectral filters. Beneath the static, there was breathing, rhythmic, slow, and unmistakably human. But here's the terrifying part. The breathing didn't match either of the 2 people in the tunnel. Delgado ordered a new search of the area. Specialized teams went in, equipped with thermal imaging, motion sensors, and drones. None came back with solid evidence. But one drone, before its signal cut, recorded something chilling. A narrow corridor that wasn't listed on any city plans, sealed off with concrete decades ago. That's when the department's tone shifted. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore. It was a cover-up. Chapter 15. The Forgotten Corridor. The newly discovered corridor wasn't on any map. No digital records. No construction blueprints. It was as if it had been deliberately erased from existence. But why? Detective Delgado's team returned with a demolition crew to break through the old concrete barrier. As the drills whined and dust filled the air, a strange metallic scent crept out. Cold, sharp, like blood and rust mixed together. The air inside was still, too still. Even the sound seemed to get swallowed whole. Once they stepped through, their flashlights illuminated a narrow hallway lined with faded red tiles. The walls were damp, streaked with something dark that no one wanted to identify. On one side, there were marks, long, jagged gouges, as though someone had desperately clawed at the wall trying to escape. And at the far end of the corridor stood a single door. No handle. Just the faint outline of what looked like a handprint burned into the surface. The tech team tried to take readings, but their devices began to fail one by one. Batteries drained, cameras glitched, microphones distorted with static. Delgado, usually composed, felt a pressure in her chest like she was being watched. When she ordered the team to back out, one officer didn't respond. They turned around, and he was gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. The tunnel had claimed another. Chapter 16. The Vanished Officer. When the team realized Officer Daniels was missing, panic swept through the corridor like a cold wave. His flashlight lay on the ground, still on, flickering weakly against the damp red tiles. The radio crackled once, his voice barely audible, then silence. Detective Delgado shouted his name, her voice echoing endlessly down the hall. But there was no answer, no movement, nothing but the faint hum of something electrical far beneath the floor. It was as if the air itself had swallowed him whole. When backup arrived, the team conducted a full sweep of the corridor. Every inch was scanned, every possible hiding place examined. But there was no trace of Daniels. His body cam footage was equally chilling. It cut off abruptly, the last frame showing what looked like a figure standing behind him, barely visible in the corner of the screen. Experts later analyzed that frame hundreds of times. Some said it was a camera glitch. Others swore the outline looked unmistakably human, or at least used to be. After that night, no one wanted to go back into the corridor. Not even the most seasoned officers. The entrance was sealed once again, this time welded shut with a thick steel plate. But deep underground, behind that sealed door, motion sensors still picked up something moving. Something pacing. Chapter 17. The Footage They Tried to Bury. Weeks after Officer Daniels' disappearance, an anonymous file appeared on the precinct's internal network. No sender, No metadata, just a single folder labeled Evidence. Do not delete. Inside were fragments of footage from Daniel's body cam. The department claimed the files had been corrupted, that nothing could be recovered. But what was there told a different story. The first clip showed Daniel's breathing heavily, his flashlight trembling as he turned down the narrow corridor. "Detective?" he whispered. No one replied. A faint knocking sound echoed from the far end of the hall, 3 slow knocks, followed by silence. Then the static hit. White noise filled the frame, but for just 1 second, something appeared. A face. Not human, not animal. Something caught between both. Pale, distorted, its mouth open too wide, eyes black as glass. After that, the footage cut to black. Delgado ordered an immediate review, but hours later, the file vanished from every system. The IT team swore no one deleted it. The backup servers had been wiped clean remotely at the exact same moment. The department quietly classified the case as unsolved. Daniel's name was added to a memorial wall. But rumors spread fast. Officers said the file still exists, circulating online under a new name. They call it the corridor tape. Chapter 18, The Whistleblower. Months passed. The case went cold. Officially, at least. But deep inside the department, one detective refused to let it die. Her name was Maria Holt, a 12-year veteran known for being fearless, meticulous, and some said too curious for her own good. She'd been close friends with Officer Daniels before he vanished. And when his files mysteriously disappeared, she noticed something strange. Her own access logs had been wiped too. At first, Holt thought it was a technical glitch. But then she got a call. A blocked number, a distorted voice. "Stop asking questions about Daniels, or you'll end up next." That was when Holt decided to go rogue. She began copying classified files, recording late-night statements, and digging through archives long buried under restricted tags. One night, she met with a journalist in a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of town. The man slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything you need is here," he whispered. "But be careful. They're watching." That drive reportedly contained recovered fragments from the corridor tape, plus confidential notes linking the case to an experimental military unit that had been testing psychological warfare techniques nearby. A week later, Holt's apartment was broken into. No valuables were taken, just her computer and the drive. She hasn't been seen publicly since. But a Reddit account under her old username started posting again last month. Chapter 19, The Secret Unit. Holt's files hinted at a shadowy operation. Unit 47, a covert military research team that had been active decades ago in the area surrounding the abandoned asylum and tunnels. Ostensibly, they were testing advanced surveillance and acoustic mapping technologies. But internal memos, leaked through Holt's drive, suggested something far more disturbing. According to the documents, Unit 47 had been experimenting with low-frequency sound waves capable of inducing hallucinations, disorientation, and, in some cases, disappearance. Their notes described subjects vanishing during exposure, with only faint traces of their DNA left behind. Investigators began drawing chilling parallels. Daniel Mercer, Eli Porter, Officer Daniels. All had last been seen in areas where low-frequency sounds had been reported. All disappeared without trace. Even more unsettling, Unit 47's experiments had never fully ended. Internal communications showed that a small contingent had been quietly relocated to a private research facility not far from the town. Locals reported strange lights and unusual hums at night, the same as Daniel and Lydia described. Experts reviewed the acoustic frequencies, and the results were horrifying. If amplified, the waves could affect the human brain in ways that made it receptive to manipulation. Chapter 20, The Final Warning. As Unit 47's existence came to light, local authorities were warned to step lightly. A letter appeared at the precinct, typed and signed, postmarked from an unknown city. Inside, it simply read, "Stop digging or you will vanish like the others. Some doors should never be opened." Detective Delgado recognized the handwriting, or at least the style. It matched other communications tied to Holt before she disappeared. Soon after, residents reported strange phenomena. Streetlights flickered in rhythmic patterns. Dogs barked at empty air. People walking near the forest reported hearing whispers calling their names, some in languages they didn't know. The team knew this wasn't paranoia. Daniel, Eli, Officer Daniels, even Lydia, all had encountered the same warnings before disappearing. That night, Delgado stayed late at her office, reviewing the files one more time. Her computer screens glitched. Shadows stretched across the walls unnaturally. A soft, low hum filled the room. She recognized the frequency immediately, the same tone captured in the corridor tape. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "It's already watching you. Stop now." But Delgado couldn't stop. The cases, the vanishings, the patterns, they demanded answers. That warning was clear. Curiosity had consequences. And in the shadows of the tunnels, the watchers were patient. Chapter 21, The Evidence That Disappeared. Just when the investigation seemed on the brink of revelation, the evidence began vanishing. Files, footage, witness statements, everything tied to Daniel Mercer, Officer Daniels, and Unit 47 mysteriously disappeared from secure servers. Delgado's team struggled to comprehend it. Backup drives were corrupted overnight. Cameras storing key recordings glitched, erasing hours of footage. Even the original camcorder used by Daniel, recovered months earlier, failed to power on. Forensic experts called it unprecedented. Nothing in the lab explained how digital, analog, and physical media could simultaneously vanish without external tampering. But Delgado suspected otherwise. She pieced together a pattern. All items were taken from locations where the low-frequency hums had been reported. It was as if the corridor itself, or whatever inhabited it, had the ability to target and erase evidence. Meanwhile, rumors spread online. Hackers claimed to have recovered fragments of deleted footage, blurry, distorted images of figures moving unnaturally, whispering names, and vanishing into walls. No one could confirm the authenticity, but the similarities were undeniable. This forced Delgado to consider the terrifying possibility. The corridor didn't just consume people, consume truth. Every photo, tape, or note that approached the heart of the mystery risked being erased, leaving only memory and fear. The case files now existed largely in whispers and rumors, almost like the disappearances themselves were meant to fade from reality. Chapter 22, The Final Descent. Delgado knew the only way to confront the truth was to go back. The corridor, sealed for decades, had claimed Daniel, Officer Daniels, Lydia, and countless fragments of evidence. But she wasn't going to leave it unchallenged. Equipped with thermal cameras, motion sensors, and a modified audio device designed to track low-frequency vibrations, she descended alone. Each step echoed unnaturally in the tunnel, as though the walls themselves were breathing around her. The air grew colder. Her flashlight flickered against the damp, red-streaked tiles. And then she heard it, the hum. Not faint, not distant, loud, surrounding her. It resonated in her chest, vibrating through her bones, making her doubt her senses. As she advanced, she noticed shadows stretching across the walls. They weren't static, they followed her, anticipating every movement. Delgado realized she wasn't just observing them. She was being measured. Her equipment registered something impossible. Multiple heat signatures, yet no physical bodies. Shapes moved independently, merging and splitting like smoke. Whispers echoed, some repeating her own thoughts aloud, others speaking in voices she had never heard before. At the far end of the tunnel, a doorway appeared, exactly where Victor Hale's camcorder had ended years earlier. A low, distorted whisper urged her forward. Delgado paused, knowing every step could make her the next disappearance. But the truth beckoned. Chapter 23, The Face Behind the Shadows. Delgado's heart pounded as she approached the doorway. The whispers had grown louder, forming fragments of words she almost understood. "You shouldn't be here. You can't leave." Beyond the door, the tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber. Shadows pooled across the walls like liquid darkness. And in the center, she saw it. A figure, humanoid but impossibly distorted, its face a blur of shifting features. One moment it resembled Daniel Mercer, the next, Officer Daniels. Then Lydia. All of them. The figure moved without walking, gliding across the floor. Delgado raised her audio device. It responded instantly. The low-frequency hum coalesced into a voice, whispering her deepest fears, regrets, and secrets. She felt as if the being could see inside her mind. "Who are you?" she whispered, trembling. The shadows rippled, then solidified slightly. "We are the corridor," the voice said. "We are what you ignore, what you bury, what you fear. We watch, and we wait." It reached toward her, but not with hands. The darkness extended, seeping into the air, twisting light and sound. Delgado realized that the corridor's faces were not individuals. They were fragments of everyone it had claimed, absorbed into something greater. The revelation was bone-chilling. The corridor wasn't alive in a traditional sense. It was a collector of existence, a living memory of every person it had swallowed. Chapter 24, The Escape That Almost Failed. Delgado's instincts screamed at her. Stay calm. Stay focused. One wrong move and she'd become another fragment in the corridor's memory. The shadows pulsed, rippling toward her like ink in water. She backed up slowly, keeping her flashlight steady. Every step seemed to stretch the tunnel, making the exit feel miles away. Her breathing synced with the hum, a vibration she could feel in her chest. It was disorienting, almost paralyzing. Suddenly, a shadow shot out, wrapping around her leg. She stumbled, nearly falling. The whispers became screams. Voices of Daniel, Lydia, Daniels, all calling to her in despair and warning. Panic surged, but she forced herself to run, shoving against the darkness, following the dim glow of the sealed doorway. Her equipment failed one by one. The flashlight flickered. The audio device sparked. Delgado pressed forward blindly, hands brushing the walls, feeling the cold, damp stone. Then, just as the corridor seemed to stretch infinitely, she saw it, the light from the outside weak but steady. Summoning every ounce of willpower, she lunged toward it. The shadows recoiled as she crossed the threshold. Delgado slammed the steel door behind her. For a moment, silence. Then the faint hum lingered, distant but unmistakable. She had escaped, but the corridor remained, waiting, watching, and its whispers followed her in every shadow she passed from that day onward. Chapter 25, The Corridor's Secret Lives On. Even after Delgado's escape, the story didn't end. The corridor remained sealed, yet the disappearances continued, sporadic, unexplainable, each leaving behind the same eerie signature. Whispers, shadows, and vanished evidence. Urban explorers, thrill-seekers, and even stray animals near the abandoned asylum reported strange phenomena. Lights flickered in the dead of night. Footsteps echoed where no one walked. Low, pulsating hums vibrated through the earth. Some claimed to see faces in the shadows, fleeting and distorted. Experts who analyzed Delgado's recovered notes concluded the corridor wasn't just a location. It was a phenomenon, part architectural anomaly, part psychological enigma, and part unknown force. It absorbed memories, identities, and evidence, rendering all trace of its victims non-existent. Whistleblowers warned authorities, but every attempt to study it was thwarted by technical malfunctions, equipment failures, or the inexplicable disappearance of researchers. Even modern surveillance technology failed to register the corridor accurately. The terrifying truth remained. The corridor doesn't merely exist beneath the surface. It chooses its participants, feeding off curiosity and fear. And no matter how much you know about it, it adapts. It waits. Delgado's final report ended with a stark warning. Some places should never be explored. Some doors should never be opened. The corridor is patient, and it remembers everything it takes. Don't go looking for it, or you may never return. The sealed tunnel beneath the asylum now lies in silence. But deep within its walls, the whispers continue, the shadows stir, and its secret lives on, forever waiting for the next curious soul.